Hello, my name is Michael Bestwick, and we're here at Penn State, New Kensington, where I'm currently exhibiting a show entitled Found. Here we have one of my early pieces, a barn beam low back chair using a hand-hewn barn beam that's probably 100 years old and just scraps of steel that I welded together. And then right next to it is a continuum of that series, only with a high back. So this is just a high back barn beam chair. With this one, I tried not to do anything to the wood, and it's in the same condition as when I found it. And it was out of a salvaged barn. Somebody had reclaimed the barn and was selling the parts of it. Next to that, I have two pieces, the top one being a found object assemblage. I had entitled it, Have You Seen Me? And it's using just objects that I found, not modified in any way, but just joined together, whether welding or whatever. And then the one below it is from a series of branded flowers, I called them, where it is reclaimed wood, and I've made brands which I heat up in a forge and literally brand the wood like you would cattle in a nonsensical design, so it doesn't really say anything. And then the flowers are traditionally forged with a coal fire and a hammer and an anvil. Next to that one is a continuing in a series of chairs that I've been doing, but this is a much more recent one where I've been using a technique of carving steel with a plasma cutter. And this is something that I've been developing over the last year. And it gives it a very craftsman-like feel, and using found objects also, where this is a found piece of wood. It's a very decorative and modern feel at the same time. Next to it is a found object assemblage. A lot of my work is untitled, so this would just be axe and barnwood. And it is the carved steel axe, accented with flowers that are cut from 55-gallon drums. And the color of the drum is what the color of the flower is, so it's red, white, green. Next to it is a piece that I entitled A Manual Labor. And although it has a crucifix type feel to it, it is not a religious piece. It's representing the labor of industry. And this is more of a resting position rather than a suffering position. Next to it, I have one of the first pieces that I carved, and this is a chunk of railroad track that I had actually used as a mechanic for a long time. I probably had this piece of steel 10, 15 years, and it lived on most of my workbenches where I had worked. And it was something that I would hammer on, and very early on I used this as an anvil in my studio. And I needed some things to practice this technique of carving steel on. It's just something that came out very nice and easily. This is the last of the chairs I've done in a series for this show. This is found, objects, pieces of steel that were bought for scrap out of a steel manufacturing shop, assembled into a chair, and then using this carving technique with the plasma cutter, you get a very decorative Art Nouveau or Art Deco kind of look to it. Here's a high back chair combining the barnwood with the carved steel. I think they play off of each other very nicely and gives a very decorative craftsman type look to it. I'm very happy with the way that one came out. Here's a early sculpture that I did using reclaimed materials. This would be a 55-gallon drum that was cut up and welded back together. And this is a hawk with a fish in its claw. So I entitled this one Raptor Fishing. This one came out very nice. I'm happy with this one. Very nice shape to the nice flow. Next to it is the second in a series of the Emmanuel labor figure, and this one is Son of Labor. And if you start where the figure is at the bottom, he's in a coal mining, coal mine, and then it goes into the railroad, goes into the steel industry with the representation of the sun and the moon 24/7, and then the row houses that I stylized like gears, and I was trying to imply on the laborer being a cog on the gear of industry. It goes from the row houses down into the steps leading into the gears of industry, where you wind up with the rebirth of the labor, and the cycle continues, the circle. This is an early sculpture that was done at the same time as the hawk. This is an owl using found objects, 55-gallon drum once again. I was just like I said, very early in sculpting and needed materials and had a few rusting drums out back, so they got volunteered to be material. This one has a lot of movement to it. I really enjoy the shape that I was able to achieve. Next to that is a continuing of the carved steel chairs. This is the moon god chair with the carved seat and back. This is the first chair I did in this series that I used all carved steel. And the seat has actually got a little dish to it, and that's from the warping, from the cutting process actually.